Okay, everyone. I don't know where or how to begin. I'm writing this and my hands are shaking. And I can't stop thinking about what happened. I've quit that job. I'm done. I can't go back to that place again. Not even walk past it. This whole thing happened recently, but it's still nesting in my head like it was yesterday. I'm just a young guy, like any other. Money was tight, so I took a job in hotel security. Not a 5-star place, mind you. Just an average hotel. Decent condition, but operational, and had guests. My work was in shifts, and the one I worked most often was a night shift, from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Of course, it was dead boring most of the time. Complete silence, unless a drunk guest came back late or some other minor incident occurred. The whole job consisted of sitting in front of security camera monitors, doing a quick round every hour or two on the floors, make sure everything was okay, and answering any calls from rooms or outside. Our operations center was a small room next to the reception with a desk holding the monitors and an internal phone and a logbook where we noted down any observations. The cameras covered most important areas: the main entrance, reception, the lobby, the corridors on each floor, in front of the elevators and rooms, the restaurant, the bar, if there was one, and the garage, if applicable. But there was one very important place, perhaps the crux of this whole story, that had no cameras inside the elevator itself. The hotel elevator was a bit odd. With the inner manual door, you had to pull open after the automatic one opened. Its sound, going up and down, was distinctive. A faint whine and a mechanical groan that made you feel like it was exerting effort. I once asked my direct supervisor why there wasn't a camera inside the elevator, especially since it's a place where anything could happen. He replied coolly, telling me that the hotel owner considered it an unnecessary expense, and who's gonna do anything inside an elevator anyway? It's just a minute going up or down. Strange logic, obviously. But what could I do? I was just an employee, collecting my paycheck. Maybe if there had been a camera inside, things would have been different. Or maybe I would have officially lost my mind much sooner. Anyway, I started noticing this strange thing, maybe 2 or 3 months into the job. Like I said, the night shift is boring, so you become hyper-focused on any movement on the screens, or any weird sound you hear. The first time I noticed this man, it seemed completely normal at first. I saw him on the lobby camera, entering through the main hotel door, walking normally, looking ordinary, dressed very normally, slacks and a shirt, neither too fancy nor shabby. A man in his 40s or early 50s, thinning black hair, very unremarkable features. You wouldn't even remember if you met him again. He headed towards the elevator, pressed a button, and waited for the elevator to come down. It was on an upper floor, and when the door opened, he went in, and the door closed. All very normal, as usual. I glanced at the elevator monitor screen to see which floor he was going to, just so I know if anything happened. The elevator lit up the number for the 4th floor. Okay, I wait a few seconds. Normally, when it reaches the 4th floor, the camera on the 4th floor corridor should capture him exiting the elevator. But strangely, the 4th floor camera didn't show anyone exiting the elevator. The elevator arrived, the door opened and closed. We see this in the elevator light, reflecting in the corridor. But no one came out. I thought maybe I'd zone out for a second and missed it. Or maybe the camera had a blind spot right at the door. even though the camera covered the entire corridor in front of the elevator. I rewound the lobby camera recording. Yes, there's a man entering the elevator. I rewound the 4th floor camera recording. The elevator arrived, opened, closed, and nobody exited. Okay, maybe he went down again quickly before I saw. I checked the elevator movement log. It showed it went down to the 2nd floor shortly after. I looked at the 2nd floor camera. Nobody exited there either. The elevator continued down and stopped in the lobby again. So where was this man? Did he enter the elevator and just not exit on any floor? At first, I thought maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was tired. Maybe there was a glitch in the camera system. I let it go. But 2 or 3 days later, the exact same scenario. The same man, or someone who looked incredibly similar. As I said, his features are very generic. Didn't stick in the mind. Enters from the lobby, gets into the elevator, selects a floor. Once was the 5th, another time the 3rd. The elevator goes up, reaches the floor, the door opens and closes, and nobody exits on the corridor camera. This is when I started to get seriously worried. This wasn't normal. I began to focus on this man whenever he appeared. I noticed something even stranger. The timing of his appearances and disappearances made no logical sense at all. For example, I see him entering the hotel at 1 a.m., get into the elevator, and supposedly go up to the 6th floor. The elevator arrives. Nobody exits. Then exactly 2 minutes later, I see him exiting the lobby. How? The elevator indicator still showed it was on the 6th floor. There was no recorded movement of the elevator descending. It was as if he entered the elevator in the lobby and exited in the lobby 2 minutes later, but in between the elevator, traveled to the 6th floor and back without actually moving. Another time, I saw him exiting the elevator in the lobby at 3 a.m. Okay, I kept watching the entrance cameras to see him leave the hotel. Nothing. He didn't leave. So where did he go? The restroom? Did he sit in the lobby? I scanned everywhere on the cameras. No trace of him. It was like he stepped out of the elevator and vanished into thin air. And then, maybe 15 minutes later, I see him entering through the main hotel door again. Where was he for those 15 minutes if he never actually left? I started going crazy. I found myself waiting for him to appear every night. Sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't. No fixed schedule. I asked my colleagues on other shifts, described him, and asked if they'd seen him, or if there was a guest matching his description. They all say they hadn't noticed, or maybe he was just a regular guest nobody paid much attention to. I asked the reception staff. They said no one matching that description had booked a room alone or frequented the hotel regularly. The guest logs had no one matching either the description or these bizarre timings. I started digging through camera recordings from previous days, entire nights spent replaying footage of this man entering and exiting the elevator. The same weird pattern repeated. Enters from the lobby. Elevator goes to a certain floor. Nobody exits on that floor. A little later, he suddenly appears exiting the elevator in the lobby, or conversely exits the elevator in the lobby. Then appears entering the main hotel door sometime later, without having ever left in the first place. One time I decided I had to confront him. I had to know who he was. what his story was. I was sitting in the security room, eyes glued to the monitors. Around 2:30 a.m., I caught his silhouette entering through the main door. My heart started pounding hard. I left the room and ran out to the lobby. It was him, walking calmly towards the elevator. I called out, a bit loudly, "Sir, excuse me." He didn't turn around, as if he couldn't hear me at all. He continued walking and pressed the elevator button. I hurried towards him, calling out again, "Sir, please, just a moment. I need to talk to you." I reached him just as the elevator door was opening. He looked at me with a look. I can't describe it. An empathy look, like he was looking right through me, not seeing me at all. No expression whatsoever. No surprise. No anxiety. Nothing. Like a statue. And he stepped into the elevator. Before the door closed, I tried to reach out my hand to stop him or get in with him. But I don't know what happened. I felt like a heavy wall of air pushed me back for a moment, and the automatic door slid shut in my face, followed by the inner manual door closing with a muffled thud. I stood there in front of the closed door like an idiot, feeling a strange chill in my body. I looked up at the floor indicator panel above the door. The elevator hadn't lit up any floor number. The light for the floor number, which should illuminate when it's ascending or descending, was completely off, as if it was stationary. But I could hear its faint whining sound, like it was running. I ran back to the security room to check the cameras. I looked at the cameras for every single floor. No sign of the elevator arriving at any floor. The indicator light showing the elevator's position and my control panel in the room was also off, as if the elevator didn't even exist in the system anymore. I stared blankly at the monitors for about 5 minutes, unable to comprehend anything. My heart felt like it was going to stop from fear and confusion. Suddenly, I heard the distinct ding sound of an elevator arriving, coming from the lobby. I quickly looked at the lobby camera and saw the elevator door opening, and the man stepping out with the same calmness, the same empty gaze. He walked out towards the main entrance, left the hotel, and disappeared down the street. How? The elevator hadn't gone to any floor and hadn't moved from its spot, at least according to the indicators and the cameras. So how did this man exit 5 minutes later? Where was he during those 5 minutes inside the elevator that was apparently stationary in the lobby? That night I couldn't sleep at all after my shift ended. My mind was racing. Every possibility crossed my mind. Was this a ghost? Was I hallucinating? Was there a major technical problem with the elevator and cameras that nobody knew about? But how could all the floor cameras fail to capture him exiting? And how could his timing be so utterly illogical? I decided I had to know what exactly was happening inside the elevator. Since there were no cameras, I'd have to rely on my own senses. The next night, I was lying in wait for him. As soon as I saw his silhouette enter the main door, I pretended to be busy with something at the reception desk near the elevator. I watched him walk towards the elevator with the same detachment, press the button. The elevator was already in the lobby. The door opened. The man started to step inside. In that instant, without thinking, I took 2 quick steps and slipped into the elevator behind him, just before the door closed. My heart was hammering like a drum. The man wasn't startled, didn't even glance at me, as if I were thin air. He stood in one corner of the elevator, and I stood in the opposite corner. both facing the closing door. The automatic door slid shut, followed by the inner door. The elevator grew dimmer. The light inside was weak and flickered slightly. I looked at the panel of floor buttons. He hadn't pressed any button. Neither had I. So where was he supposedly going all those other times? How was the elevator moving on its own? Before I could ask him anything or do anything, the elevator started to move. But not up or down. The movement was strange, like the elevator was sliding sideways or rotating slowly on its axis, accompanied by a louder whine than usual and a weird metallic grinding sound. The light inside began to flicker violently, growing dimmer still. I looked at the man standing in the corner. He was still standing with the same stillness, staring straight ahead with that empty gaze. I tried to speak. My voice came out choked. "Who are you? What is happening?" He didn't answer. It was like he wasn't even there with me in this metal box. Suddenly, the elevator stopped. Not a smooth stop, like elevators usually make at floors. This was an abrupt halt, like a car slamming on its brakes. I stumbled backwards, hitting the wall. The light cut out completely for a moment, then returned as a very faint glow, barely enough to make out each other's features, and I heard a sound from outside the door. Not the sound of people talking, nor the normal sounds of movement in a hotel corridor. It was a sound like distant sirens, but not mechanical sirens. Sharp, overlapping wails, like human voices screaming at extremely high, varying pitches, but fragmented and rhythmic in a terrifying way, as if it were a language or a form of communication, a sound that makes the hair on your body stand on end. The automatic elevator door began to open, extremely slow, with a loud, metallic screech, as if it were struggling. With every centimeter the door opened, the sound outside grew louder and closer, and the light filtering through the gap wasn't the normal light of a hotel corridor. It was a light, a dim red, mixed with a strange blue, like an unnatural twilight. My heart felt like it was going to burst out of my chest from terror. I was frozen in place, unable to move or scream. My eyes were fixed on the slowly widening gap, and on the man, still standing like a statue. And when the door had opened about 2 or 3 handwidths, I saw. I wish I hadn't seen it. It wasn't a hotel corridor. It wasn't any place I knew or could even imagine. The floor was not a floor. Something shimmering and slowly rippling, like the surface of thick, black water. And the sky above, if it was sky at all, was swirling vortexes of the strange red and blue light I'd seen filtering in, moving slowly like living clouds. There were no walls. It was terrifyingly vast, open space, but visibility was poor, as if there was a light, moving fog. And the sounds were coming from beings moving in that fog. I couldn't see their forms clearly. They were like tall, thin shadows, swaying and moving in an inhuman way, as if their joints were everywhere, and they were the source of those sharp siren sounds, and they were talking with them. High-pitched wails, low ones, intermittent, continuous, overlapping in a way that made you feel like your brain would explode. Not just loud noise. No, the sound had consciousness, meaning, but a meaning that was incomprehensible and terrifying to the extreme degree. I felt for a moment that these sounds were trying to penetrate my ears and reach my brain directly, as if trying to dismantle my thoughts, and amidst that fog, I glimpsed something else. Human figures, or at least they had been human at some point. They were standing, scattered, motionless, like statues, staring in random directions, and their eyes were completely white. No pupils, no irises. Their mouths were slightly open, as if caught in a silent scream. They were wearing ordinary clothes like we wear every day. One wore a suit, a woman wore a dress, another man wore a galabea, like ordinary people who had been snatched and placed in this horrifying place. Frozen forever. Was a man with me in the elevator one of them? Or did he travel between them? I saw all of this in just a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity. I felt a wave of icy coldness spread through my entire body, and pure terror and existential dread, like the entire universe was wrong and inverted. I felt intense nausea, my stomach churning. Suddenly, as quickly as it had opened, the door began to close again, with that terrifying screeching sound. The sounds and the sight started to fade gradually as the door closed, and the man with me, completely unaffected, still standing in the same spot with the same cold indifference. The door closed completely. The weak, flickering light returned to its already dim normality. The whining and grinding sound started again, and I felt the elevator move again in that strange way, as if returning to its place. I remained leaning against the wall, my whole body trembling, unable to stand properly. I looked at the man, then at the closed door, unable to process what I had seen and heard. This wasn't a hallucination. It was real, terrifyingly real. After about a minute or less, the elevator stopped, normally this time, and I heard the usual ding of arrival at the ground floor lobby. The inner door opened, followed by the automatic door. The normal lobby air, the warm yellow lobby light, the faint hum of the air conditioning. Everything returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. The man who had been with me stepped out of the elevator, calmly, walked towards the main entrance in the same manner, exited, and disappeared down the street. I remained standing inside that damned elevator for about a minute, unable to move. My body was rigid, my mind screaming. The sounds I heard were still ringing in my ears. The image of that horrific place was seared into my eyes, the sight of the frozen people with their wide eyes. I couldn't get it out of my head. I stumbled out of the elevator, feeling like I was drunk. I went back to the security room and sat down on the chair, feeling like I was about to collapse. I sat there, staring at my empty monitors in front of me, and at the elevator control panel, which had returned to normal, showing the elevator was stationary on the ground floor. What was that? What had I just seen? Was this elevator a gateway? A portal to other places? Other dimensions? And that man, was he traveling between these places? Was he one of the inhabitants of that horrifying dimension I saw? Or was he just the driver of this elevator? on its strange journeys. And those frozen people. Were they people who rode this elevator at the wrong time, saw what shouldn't have been seen, and got trapped there? All these questions swirled in my mind. I couldn't find any logical answer. The only thing I was sure of was the terror I felt. Not the kind of fear you see in movies. No. This was a deep dread, a fear of absolute unknown, of the fact that there are things in the universe we're not supposed to know about. If we stumble upon them, by chance, our lives will never be normal again. I couldn't finish my shift. I felt if I stayed another minute in that place, I would go insane, or something would happen to me. I gathered my few belongings, wrote a quick resignation note, left it on the desk for the manager, and walked out of that hotel, disappearing into the street before dawn broke, feeling like someone was following me, like those terrifying siren sounds were still whispering in my ears. Since that day, I haven't been able to sleep properly. Every time I close my eyes, I see the red and blue light, and I hear those sharp sounds. I'm afraid to ride any elevator alone. I'm afraid of enclosed spaces. I've started to feel that the reality we live in is incredibly fragile, and that there are other places existing around us, perhaps intersecting with ours at certain moments, in certain places. Like that damned elevator. I left the job. I'm still looking for new work. But this fear inside me won't go away. I wrote this here to vent, to tell what happened to me. Maybe someone will believe me. Maybe someone has gone through a similar experience somewhere. I don't want anyone to know who I am. All I want is to get this nightmare out of my system, and to warn anyone who might work in a place like that, or notice something strange like this. If you see an old, suspicious elevator, if you get a bad feeling about it, if you notice a strange person using it in an illogical way, stay away from it. Get away immediately, because you might not be going up to the floor above. You might be going somewhere else entirely, a place from which no one returns intact. I'm sorry if this is long or rambling, but I'm writing exactly what I feel and remember. Those sounds, I still hear them, sometimes when I'm alone at night. I just hope it's my imagination. I really hope so.